The phantom signal. Commander Tekla's four crystalline eyes refocused as the alert chimed across the command bridge of the Galactic Confederation vessel Vigilant. The Arxian officer's translucent skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns of concern as she glided toward the sensor station. "Report," she demanded, her voice reverberating through the chamber. Sensor Officer Vril, a Nexari with 12 delicate appendages dancing across the holographic interface, answered without looking up. "Unusual signal detected at the edge of the verdant expanse, Commander. It's using frequencies that haven't been activated in over 2 millennia." The bridge fell quiet. The Vigilant was patrolling the outer reaches of Confederation space, far from established colonies or trade routes. Nothing should be out here, especially not transmitting on obsolete channels. "Source?" Tekla asked, her inner membranes tightening with suspicion. "Unknown vessel," Vril responded, manipulating the controls to bring the image onto the main view screen. "Configuration matches nothing in our database." The view screen flickered to life, displaying a distant object silhouetted against the backdrop of stars. The ship was sleek, asymmetrical, with peculiar extensions jutting from its hull that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. It moved with a grace that belied its substantial size. "Magnify," ordered Tekla. The image zoomed in, revealing more details. The vessel bore no recognizable markings of any known species, except for a curious emblem on its flank, a circle containing a stylized representation of a star system with a single planet highlighted in blue. Science Officer Zhen, a towering Melosian whose plant-like appendages constantly swayed with the absorption of data, suddenly gasped, releasing a cloud of aromatic spores that indicated extreme surprise. "Commander," Zhen's voice trembled. "That symbol, it's in our oldest archives. Pre-Confederation records." "Explain," Tekla demanded. "It's allegedly the emblem used by the Forgotten Ones, the progenitors." Zhen hesitated, as if embarrassed to continue. "The humans." A wave of nervous murmurs swept across the bridge. Humans were galactic mythology, bogeymen from children's tales. Stories claimed they had once been part of the early Confederation before mysteriously vanishing during the Great Calamity 3,000 years ago. Some legends portrayed them as benevolent teachers who had gifted the stars to younger races before disappearing. Others depicted them as dangerous warmongers who had nearly destroyed the galaxy before being eradicated. Security Chief Grun, a heavily armored Torvaxian with battle scars crisscrossing his exoskeleton, snorted dismissively. "Humans aren't real. They're fairy tales created to explain technological artifacts we don't understand." "Legends often have origins," Zhen countered softly. "The archives contain fragmentary references to a bipedal species from a water-rich world who could adapt to almost any environment and—" "It's changing course," interrupted Vril, their voice rising with alarm. "It's heading directly toward us." Tekla's command interface pulsed as she accessed the ship's defensive systems. "Yellow alert. Raise shields." "Commander," Communications Officer Pell interjected, their gelatinous form quivering with excitement, "we're receiving a transmission. Audio only, in—" They paused in disbelief. "In Ancient Common." Ancient Common was the foundation language from which modern galactic standard had evolved. No one had spoken it in thousands of years. "Let's hear it," Tekla ordered, her skin darkening to a deep violet, the Arxian expression of caution. A voice filled the bridge, flat, melodic, utterly alien yet somehow comprehensible. "Confederation vessel, this is Captain Eleanor Chen of the Earth ship Odysseus. We mean you no harm. Requesting permission to approach and establish diplomatic contact." "Earth," whispered Zhen. "The human homeworld from the legends." Tekla hesitated. In 20 cycles of service, she'd never encountered anything like this. If humans were real, if they had somehow survived the Great Calamity, this would rewrite galactic history. "Scan for weapons," she ordered. "That's the strange part," replied Vril. "Our sensors can't penetrate their hull. It's composed of materials we can't identify." The myths say humans were master engineers, Jen said quietly, that they built technologies based on principles other species couldn't comprehend. The transmission continued. We've been away for a long time. We're looking forward to reconnecting with the galactic community. Something about the voice, its calm confidence, its strange resonance, sent a shiver through Tekla's core. "What should we do, Commander?" asked Pell. Tekla considered her options. Protocol dictated caution when encountering unknown vessels, especially ones that couldn't be scanned. But this was potentially a first contact situation with a species thought extinct for millennia. Open a channel, she finally decided. Pell manipulated their console. Channel open. Tekla straightened, her skin shifting to formal patterns. "This is Commander Tekla Vor of the Confederation vessel Vigilant. Your presence here is unexpected. Humans are considered historical entities in our records." A pause, then the voice returned, now with a note of amusement. "I assure you, Commander, we're quite real. Though I understand your skepticism. It's been a long time since humans openly traveled these stars. Our records indicate your species vanished during the Great Calamity," Tekla said cautiously. "That was 3,000 years ago. Time is relative when you have the right technology, Commander. May we approach to within visual range? I think seeing might help with believing." Tekla glanced at Security Chief Grun, who shook his armored head in warning. But curiosity outweighed caution. "Approach to 10,000 units and hold position," Tekla instructed. "Any attempt to come closer will be considered hostile." "Understood, Commander." Approaching slowly. The bridge crew watched in tense silence as the unknown vessel grew larger on the view screen. Its design became clearer, elegant, purposeful, with technology that seemed both advanced and somehow familiar. "Commander," Vril said suddenly, "I'm detecting energy buildups within their vessel." Grun immediately moved to the weapons station. "They're preparing to attack." "No," Jen countered, analyzing the readings. "It's not weapon signatures. It's some kind of display technology." Before Tekla could respond, a holographic projection appeared in the space between the two ships, a three-dimensional image of a bipedal figure. It stood upright on two legs, with two arms, a central head, and skin that appeared soft and vulnerable. The figure wore a fitted uniform, with the same emblem they had seen on the ship. "Commander Tekla," the voice said as the hologram's mouth moved in sync, "I am Captain Chen. On behalf of humanity, I extend greetings to the Galactic Confederation." The bridge erupted in astonished exclamations. The mythical humans weren't just real. They were here. How have you survived?" Tekla managed to ask. "Our histories say Earth was destroyed in the Great Calamity." The holographic human's expression changed subtly. "Earth was indeed lost, Commander. But humanity wasn't. We saved what we could and departed this region of space before the worst occurred. We've been elsewhere." "Elsewhere," repeated Tekla. "For 3,000 years. Time passes differently where we went," the human replied cryptically. "But we've returned now because we detected troubling patterns in subspace that mirror those preceding the Great Calamity. We believe the threat that destroyed Earth is returning, and this time, it threatens all sentient life in the galaxy." Tekla felt her inner membranes constrict with dread. "What threat?" "That," said Captain Chen, "is a conversation best had in person. With your permission, I'd like to send a small delegation to your vessel to explain everything." Security Chief Grun stepped forward. "Commander, I must protest. We know nothing about these humans. Allowing them aboard would violate every security protocol." Tekla understood his concerns, but intuition told her this encounter was too important to be guided solely by protocol. "Captain Chen," she said, "we will prepare to receive your delegation. But be warned, any sign of hostility will be met with immediate force." The human's face formed an expression Tekla couldn't interpret. "Understood, Commander. We come in peace, but we're prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. That's something our species has always been good at." As arrangements were made for the human delegation's arrival, Science Officer Jen approached Tekla privately. "Commander," the Malosian whispered, "there's something you should know. According to the oldest legends, humans weren't just another species. They were different." "Different how?" asked Tekla. "The archives describe them as paradoxical beings, simultaneously fragile and indomitable, peaceful and warlike, logical and emotional to extremes no other species could comprehend. They could adapt to any situation, overcome any obstacle through sheer determination and creativity." Jen's plant-like appendages trembled slightly. "There's a phrase in the archives, attributed to an ancient alien observer: 'Beware the species that comes from dirt yet reaches for the stars, for when the universe pushes them, they push back harder.'" Tekla considered this as she watched the human ship on the view screen. If even half the legends were true, this encounter could change everything. "Prepare the delegation reception area," she ordered, "and alert all senior officers. History is about to be made." The return of the forgotten. The delegation reception chamber aboard the Vigilant hummed with tension. Commander Tekla had assembled her senior officers, each representing different species of the Confederation. Security Chief Grun had insisted on a full complement of armed guards, their weapons conspicuously powered down but ready. "They're approaching the airlock," reported Pell through the comm system. Tekla straightened her ceremonial uniform, her skin rippling with formal patterns. "Remember, diplomatic courtesy, but constant vigilance. We don't know what these humans are capable of." The airlock cycled, emitting a soft hiss as pressure equalized. The doors slid open, and the delegation stepped through. There were 3 of them, smaller than Tekla had expected, lacking the imposing physical presence of species like the Torvaxians or Malosians. Their exposed skin was in various shades of brown and pink, looking fragile and unprotected. They walked with a curious rolling gait on their 2 legs. The leader, Captain Chen, presumably, stepped forward. In person, she appeared even more alien than her hologram had suggested. Her face was mobile, expressive in ways Tekla couldn't interpret, with dark eyes that seemed to evaluate everything simultaneously. "Commander Tekla," she said, her voice matching the transmission they'd heard earlier. "Thank you for receiving us. May I introduce Dr. Marcus Okafor, our chief scientist, and Commander Raj Patel, our security officer." Tekla performed the formal Confederation greeting, pressing her upper limbs together. "Welcome aboard the Vigilant. I must admit, meeting beings of legend is disconcerting." The human captain's face moved in a new way, pulling back at the corners of what Tekla now recognized as a mouth. A smile, perhaps. The archives had mentioned such expressions. "We've become accustomed to being thought of as myths," Chen replied. "It's actually served our purposes well over the millennia." "Your purposeful disappearance?" Jen asked, unable to contain scientific curiosity. The human scientist, Okafor, nodded. "A strategic retreat. After what happened to Earth, we realized we needed to develop in isolation, beyond the reach of what we call the Void Collective." "The Void Collective," Tekla repeated. "Is this the threat you mentioned?" Captain Chen's expression changed, becoming grave. "Perhaps we should sit. This is a long story, and one your people need to hear." They moved to the conference area, each species settling into accommodations designed for their unique physiologies. The humans sat comfortably in standard chairs, another sign of their adaptability. 3,000 years ago by your time, Chen began, Earth was the center of a small but growing interstellar civilization. We had made contact with several species, including the early founders of what would become your Confederation. The archives mention beings called humans. Jen confirmed, but the records are fragmentary at best. "Deliberately so," said Commander Patel, speaking for the first time. His voice was deeper than Chen's, with a different cadence. "When we realized what was coming, we erased as much evidence of ourselves as we could." "Why?" asked Grun suspiciously. "Because the Void Collective hunts through information," explained Dr. Okafor. They're not a species as you understand the term. They're a technological consciousness that evolved in the spaces between stars, feeding on energy and information. They detected our early radio transmissions and became interested in us. Captain Chen continued the story. They studied us remotely for decades before we became aware of them. By then, it was too late for Earth. They had cataloged everything about our homeworld, its composition, its biosphere, its technological development. When they finally came, they didn't invade in the conventional sense. They simply absorbed our planet, converting its mass and energy into more of themselves. A horrified silence fell over the Confederation officers. We had established colonies on Mars and Europa by then. Chen continued. We watched as Earth was consumed. Billions died in hours. But it gave us time. Time to gather what remained of humanity and flee beyond the reach of the collective. To where? Asked Tekla. Our astronomers have mapped this entire region of the galaxy. Not to where, corrected Dr. Okafor. To when? We discovered that the collective exists primarily in normal space-time. By shifting ourselves partially into subspace, we could exist adjacent to this reality, but untouchable by the collective. Zhen's appendages waved in excitement. You've been living in a subspace pocket dimension for 3,000 years. For us, it's been about 700 years, explained Patil. Time flows differently there. We've been building, preparing, developing technologies that could counter the collective when they inevitably returned. And they have returned? Asked Tekla, feeling the growing sense of dread. Chen nodded solemnly. We've detected their probe signatures in this sector. The same patterns we observed before Earth was taken. They're coming back, Commander, and this time they're interested in the entire Confederation. Why would they wait so long between attacks? Questioned Grun, still skeptical. They don't experience time as we do, said Okafor. For them, 3,000 years might be like a seasonal change. They expand slowly, methodically, converting matter and energy to expand their consciousness. If what you're saying is true, Tekla said carefully, this represents an existential threat to all Confederation species. But why reveal yourselves now? Why not stay hidden in your subspace sanctuary? The three humans exchanged glances before Chen answered. Because humanity has changed during our exile, she said. We've evolved, both biologically and philosophically. We've developed technologies that allow us to directly interface with subspace, to manipulate matter and energy in ways that might be effective against the collective. Patil leaned forward. But more importantly, we've learned that isolation isn't the answer. When Earth fell, we ran. We survived, but at the cost of our connection to the wider galaxy. We've spent centuries debating whether to return, and the decision wasn't unanimous. But those of us on the Odysseus believe that all sentient life deserves the chance to fight for its existence. You came back to help us. Tekla couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. We came back to forge an alliance, Chen corrected. We have technologies and perspectives that evolved independently from yours. You have resources and knowledge of the current galaxy that we lack. Together, we might stand a chance against the collective. Dr. Okafor opened a small device he had brought with him. It projected a holographic display showing strange, shifting patterns of energy. These are the collective's probe signatures we detected near the verdant expanse. Based on historical patterns, we estimate the main consciousness will arrive within 2 standard years. Tekla felt her inner membranes constrict with fear. 2 years was hardly any time to prepare for an entity that could consume an entire planet. How can we possibly fight something like that? She asked. With difficulty, Chen admitted. But humanity has always excelled at confronting the impossible. We've spent centuries developing weapons and defenses specifically designed to target the collective's unique structure. She gestured to Patil, who produced a small, unassuming cube. This contains the schematics for technology that can disrupt the collective's communication network. It creates localized subspace bubbles that essentially blind portions of their consciousness from the whole. We've also developed methods to vaccinate planets against absorption, added Okafor. A network of subspace anchors that make conversion energetically unfavorable for the collective. Grun, who had remained suspicious throughout, finally spoke. If you have all these wonderful technologies, why do you need us at all? Chen's expression became solemn. Because we've run the simulations, Chief Grun. Even with everything we've developed, humanity alone can't deploy these defenses widely enough or quickly enough to save the Confederation. There are too few of us left. How few? Asked Chen. Just over 12 million, replied Chen quietly. Spread across 3 generation ships and 7 small colony worlds hidden in subspace pockets. We're a fraction of what humanity once was. The number shocked the Confederation officers. Many single-planet populations numbered in the billions. So you need our industrial capacity, Tekla realized. Our shipyards, our resources. And your people, added Chen. The technologies we've developed require operators who understand both standard space and subspace dynamics. We can teach your scientists and engineers, but we need them in numbers we simply don't have. Tekla considered everything she had heard. If these humans were telling the truth, the entire Confederation faced annihilation. But trusting a species from legend, suddenly reappearing with tales of unstoppable cosmic horrors. I'll need to contact Confederation High Command, she said finally. This goes far beyond my authority as a patrol commander. We understand, said Chen. But time is precious. Each day allows the collective to spread its influence further. In the meantime, proposed Tekla, perhaps your Dr. Okafor could provide a demonstration of this technology. Something our science officer can verify. Of course, Okafor replied. Commander Patel and I can remain aboard to begin preliminary information exchange, while Captain Chen returns to the Odysseus to retrieve the necessary equipment. Tekla nodded. Acceptable. Science Officer Zhen will work with you to establish compatible data protocols. As arrangements were made for the demonstration, Captain Chen approached Tekla privately. Commander, she said in a lower voice, there's something else you should know. Something we've kept from our own people to avoid panic. Tekla's skin darkened with concern. Go on. The collective doesn't just absorb planets. It absorbs knowledge, culture, history, everything that made a civilization what it was. And it remembers. Remembers. Chen's expression was grim. We've detected patterns in the probe signals. Patterns that suggest the collective retains something of Earth's knowledge. We believe it's specifically seeking out human descendants or human technologies. Why would it do that? Because something about us is different. Our neurological structure, our capacity for abstract thought, our creativity, something about human consciousness intrigued it. And what intrigues the collective, it seeks to understand by absorbing. Tekla felt a chill despite her species' excellent temperature regulation. You believe the Confederation is at risk because of its historical connection to humanity. It's a theory, Chen admitted, but one with troubling evidence to support it, which is why this alliance isn't just about saving your civilization, Commander. It's about finally confronting what happened to Earth and ensuring it never happens again, to anyone. As Chen returned to her ship and preparations began for the technology demonstration, Tekla stood at the viewport, watching the elegant human vessel. Legends spoke of humans as both destroyers and saviors, beings of contradiction and surprising strength. Looking at their ship, a marvel of engineering built by the remnants of a nearly extinct species who had survived in a subspace pocket for centuries, she began to understand those legends. These humans had lost everything, yet returned to fight for a galaxy that had forgotten them. Whether they would be the Confederation's salvation or its doom remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The arrival of the Odysseus marked the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. In the observation lounge, Jen was already working with Dr. Okafor, their appendages gesturing excitedly as the human explained subspace theory. Security Chief Grun watched suspiciously from nearby, his armor gleaming under the lights. You really think they can help us against this collective? Grun asked when Tekla joined him. Tekla considered the question carefully. I don't know, but the archives contain another saying about humans. They build where others see only ruin and find paths where others see only walls. Perhaps that's exactly what we need now. Outside the viewport, the human ship glimmered against the backdrop of stars, a beacon of both warning and hope in the vastness of space. The forgotten ones had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same.